2022-2023 reorganization meeting, Hastings-on-Hudson Board of Ed, July 14, 2022. Let me just pull up the actual, not online for some reason. Did the password get changed? Consortium, that's the one, right?
Yes, and it should connect.
It usually is.
I have HOH gas that I'm on.
Not much happening on the internet, though. You don't need it right now.
No, I have
The
it.
agenda.
Hard copy. It's the Maureen and Alex show.
You can use a guest if that is.
No, I got on, for some reason it knocked me out. I just want to pull up Board Docs. So I have everything here. Okay, Melissa D., do you happen to have a written out, the actual,
Oath?
the oath, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
One of us could just give you a laptop.
You don't have it memorized?
Well, the oath is here, the oath is here.
Uh-oh, I
yeah.
don't.
Okay. Thank you. Well, first I want to welcome new board member Maureen. You'll be sworn in here, so it's official. I just want to make sure I've got the order of everything proper. Okay. And Maureen, is your last name hyphenated? Is it Lennon Santana?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Great musician.
Okay, so, yeah, you're first, and then we'll do president. Okay. All right, so, okay. I will hand this to you, and then I'll read it. If you could stand up, Maureen, and,
Sorry.
okay. So repeat after me. I, state your name, do solemnly swear
I, Maureen Lennon Santana, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of trustee, Hastings-on-Hudson Board of Education,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of trustee of the Hastings Board of Education,
Hastings-on-Hudson Union Free School District of the Town of Greenburgh, Westchester County, New York,
Hastings-on-Hudson Union Free District of the Town of Greenburgh, Westchester County, New York,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Okay.
Zero memory.
Next, do I have a nomination for the position of Board of Education President?
I nominate Alex Stout.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
My vote?
Yeah? Vote for yourself. If you
What?
don't, we're
You don't
meeting
believe in
at the top.
yourself, Alex, then come on.
It's true. Thank you very much.
Great, so, want to administer the oath to you?
I have it here on the screen.
Yep.
Oh,
you can do it,
he's
you can read
ready.
it.
Oh, is the district clerk?
The district, we've done it as president before, and then,
Bingo.
Can I read it, or?
Yes, I think so.
I, Alexander Delpias, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of President of the Board of Education, Hastings-on-Hudson Union Free School District of the Town of Greenburgh, Westchester County, New York, according to the best of my ability.
okay, you don't get to sit down there anymore.
All right.
That's it?
That's it. I'm out.
And by the way, thank you, Doug.
And then you do the vice president,
Ah, okay.
yeah. Before you, because the vice president is optional.
Are we gonna mix up the seats this year anyway?
Probably.
Why not? It's a new year.
I
Your
will
name tag,
officially-
Alex.
I'm so
I'll
used
come-
to
I will
this corner.
officially
And your
hand you the
lunch.
gavel here. Your hands are full.
Oh, thanks.
I have a lot of stuff.
So now you can do the floor, Doreen.
Why don't you just sit next to, I want you to sit next to me, no.
Doreen's moving there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Aren't I close enough?
He would need all this support.
So do I have a motion to nominate the board vice president?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Well,
Nominate.
should that be nominated first?
Yeah.
I nominate Doreen.
Busher.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well, congratulations.
Now I have to, thanks, now I have to
Congratulations as
stand.
well.
Is there walk-up music, Doug, that we could be playing? Eye of the Tiger.
Wait, do I have to say anything?
There's an oath of
No,
office.
not Eye of the Tiger.
Is there an oath of
Yeah.
office
Too
for vice
political.
president?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright, let me see it.
Same
So,
oath.
just read it.
You have the text?
Yep.
Oh, not yet.
I, Doreen Bucher, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Vice President, Hastings-on-Hudson, Board of Trustees. Hastings-on-Hudson Union Free School District of the Town of Greenberg, Westchester County, New York, according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Next on the agenda is a resolution to appoint the district clerk. How do we proceed with that?
Usually we take that as a consent agenda, because it's the same person.
Okay, because it's 7-8 on the opening of meeting. And there's an administration of oath of office to the district clerk. So should we move that to the I'm sorry?
You will vote on it now, because it's not in the consent agenda.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the resolution to appoint our district clerk?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
I think, we are supposed to officially do the oath again, right?
Oh, I guess not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I, Melissa Delaware, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of District Clerk, Hastings-on-Hudson, Union Free School District of the Town of Greenberg, Westchester County, New York, according to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Thank you. Then we have a consent agenda. It's 45 items. Is there anybody, are we pulling anything out of this agenda to talk about, or do we just do it as a slate?
I have a question. Can I ask a question? Am I supposed to move?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll help you move you.
I don't know that.
I got it, the theme for People's
Oh,
Court.
Jeremy.
Yep, are you gonna
Welcome
miss
to
Jeremy, are you
Jeremy?
gonna move to sit next to me?
No, that would disrespect Sylvia.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, that's what she said.
So maybe she wants to mix it up.
Oh, yeah.
I have a question. So all of these, Bill, like the treasurer, I mean, obviously, like, you know, that's Maureen's job and the school district treasurer and the blah, blah, blah. Are those all done by you? All of these are decided by you? Is that how it works? And then you're kind of putting it to us to vote on?
Yes.
Got it.
A lot of these roles have been,
Right,
There
yeah,
for
forever.
years.
Yeah, that's what I figured, but I didn't know if it was like from the super and then we're approving his.
Yeah, it's right. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
as super, my name is on it. The administration has brought these forward, so they all are here
Yeah.
as then to be affirmed by you through the consent agenda as a board.
Any other questions or any items? Is there a motion to approve consent agenda items number 1 through 45?
so moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
I,
Aye. So that's it then for this, yeah?
May I
Of course.
ask the president a question before I move to adjournment?
Sure.
Let me, on behalf of the administration, thank Doug.
Yeah.
yes, I wanted,
Long, hard road.
I was wondering where that was.
Normally I'd wait to follow the board, but I'll be bold and not, so I just wanted to make sure we didn't go out of this transition without really thanking you.
Yeah.
And I've been fortunate to work with excellent chairs, in this state they call them presidents, and as my previous boards, as wide-ranging as they would be, there was always superb leadership in that top seat, and you have matched that here.
Thank
And I
you.
really thank you. And professionally, you've helped my first year be as good as it could be, and I own all the errors, but you've been a great coach. Yes, a boss, but also a great coach, and I really, at a professional level, deeply, deeply thank you.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to thank you too. You know, it's definitely, you know, like I had mentioned to Sylvia and Allison, like watching them get on the board is part of my motivation. Watching you on the board has also been part of it, and how you handle things, it's definitely, you know, made it something that I wanted to do and felt like I could do. So thank you very much for that. It's been great.
As a new board member, I appreciate all the texts and calls and questions that you fielded from me, not knowing what I was doing. Thanks, Doug.
Yeah.
Don't go away yet, right?
I also want to add that I remember the first thing I mentioned to Doug was that I watched him on the board and he made a lot of sense. And I actually mentioned that to his wife before I actually said it to him directly. I know it's been a difficult year. It's been difficult before we joined in the pandemic, where a lot of craziness was happening. It was difficult when we joined with a lot of craziness happening, and I want to respect your cool, collected self even when there's a lot of crazy that we bring to you and everything else is happening. I really want to respect that. I also, and I've mentioned this to community members that have engaged with me, our dialogue and deliberations is not to the person, it's to the issue. And I like the fact that when it started becoming personal from even community members and whatnot, you reeled it and brought everybody back to realizing that issues are difficult and it's not about individuals, and I really appreciate that. So thank you for your leadership. I know as much as you are not symbolically the president, I know that all of us know that we will draw from you with what you bring. So thank you, and I hope the community also realizes that about you. So thanks.
Thank you, Navesh. I appreciate that.
Do I have a motion to adjourn the organizational meeting?
So move.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to begin our regular meeting. Is there a motion for that?
You just opened it.
Oh, I'd like to open,
Motions.
oh, it's not a motion, okay. Learning curve, right? I'd like to open the Hastings-on-Hudson Board of Education regular meeting for July 14th. On the agenda first, well, I'm going to hand it over to Bill, because we're going to start with the report from the superintendent for the state of the district, the end of the year update for that report. Is that a good time?
Sure, we are providing, thank you, Carlos. Carlos went out, made a lot of sandwiches, right, Carlos? So I don't know if you want to, I know we want to end promptly at 2, if not before. But you have a superintendent who, while he eats a lot, doesn't pay attention to what others are eating. So we had not ordered food ahead of time. So credit Doug with his last public act. You probably saw the text. Thank you, Carlos, for making the sandwiches. So why don't we, if you want some food, board members, or Maureen, Melissa, and Patrick, if you'd like some food, please grab. Maybe we can work and eat. Is that appropriate? Yes? No?
Look away from the camera.
Okay, yeah. So I'll continue on, but there is food there, so.
Thank you.
And thank Doug, and then Melissa D., who does everything, even at the last moment, she gets it done. So thank you. So we had sent to the board purposely several weeks ago quite a substantial end-of-the-year State of the Hastings School District report. We're going to keep this verbal at this point. My view is this is a springboard moment, meaning this should launch us into further discussions with the board, certainly if necessary at the August 23rd meeting. Later in the agenda, we'll talk about you all having an August retreat. Some aspects of this report could be good material for that retreat. So I talked with Doug ahead of the meeting, and then Alex reached out to me with some sense that he'd be in the seat next to me. And I think he agrees this isn't a meeting to dig deeply into this, but to really just understand generally what's here. It's in the public record. I think it's an important document. I'm understanding this has not been typical in Hastings, this type of report. It's actually atypical in most districts. to have this sort of annual summary and a mid-year summary. And that'll be something as we get into future topics, another agenda item for this meeting, we can talk about whether the board wants to keep this process going, mid-year state of the district and an end-of-the-year state of the district. Having said we're going to just use it as a springboard, I've introduced the document again. It's substantially the work of the principals, assistant principals, and special ed director and assistant director. This report, end of year, unlike the mid-year, we kept it, if you will, at the academic and the SEL side of things. We did not go into operations as we had mid-year, and that's in part because we are bringing forward in this document, which Melissa will speak to shortly, a fair amount of data. And let me emphasize, well, let me hit the themes, and then I'm going to emphasize a key point about data there. So again, I own the introduction, I own the end of this, I own all of it being cobbled together, but I think it's very important that the vast majority of it are the voices, wordsmithed a wee bit, just some minor things, but it's the voices of the principals, assistant principals, special ed director, assistant director, Jeanette Coker woven in, as well as Melissa Szymanski. There are some themes that emerge from this. Intentionally stayed with the themes that were in the mid-year. Felt that might be a little easier, at least headline themes, to be comparing back and forth between the mid-year and the end of year. It wasn't, frankly, wasn't a move of laziness, but rather more just to give some analytical consistency for you. But first off, there is a very strong intellectual and academic focus to the work in Hastings. We obviously have a range of the quality in that work, but I think this is a community, a village, and a district that should, at the end of the day, be very, very proud about the level of intellectual and academic work here, and things that were developed this year to really push us to a higher level. The curriculum review cycle, I think, is very significant. Melissa's going to speak a little bit to that, not just what you read, but she's already been working on that the last couple weeks. So summer is busy here for some of us. So we're not doing the typical administrative report for you this meeting, but Melissa's going to weave a little of that in, just so you know. Social emotional learning, again, another theme. As you know, we have strengths there, but it's something we have to keep focusing on. So let me say we have strengths and we have to keep focusing, and we now have some data on that. We have to be careful, again, not just to focus on one piece of data, but we have data. Culture is highlighted here across the document. Lots of definitions for culture. Here it's a sense, I think, of how cohesive and feeling good, so to speak, are we in our buildings. And there's been attention to that. COVID has been dominant in that sense of culture. And I think you probably read through the document how I think we actually did very, very well in maintaining our health, but being fully in school and working with the various COVID procedures, which really I think are the dominant effect on culture. Diversity, very, very important to us in Hastings, has been for a long, long time. Maureen, as the board's heard me say, when I was interviewed to be in this job, I was rightly so pressed on my commitments to diversity and all the rest. And there's a 10-page single-space document that I've written on that I should share with you, just so you have it. It's personal, but I think that's what I needed to produce to help Hastings understand that I at least would be a reasonable person to consider for this job. And there is in italics here a standard that was in the previous mid-year report. I think it's a reasonable standard for us to keep pointing to. Gauging progress, this is my hinting at data. We now have for you as a board, but as Melissa explained a little more, both Panorama on the SEL side and Renaissance STAR data. Due to COVID and other things, you don't have Regents data, you don't have SAT data. But let me be really clear here, and I repeated below this section on gauging progress, two statements I had made mid-year, or in the body of the document I did, two statements I made mid-year to families, that I value data, I value numerics, I value quantitative, but I've watched communities not be too smart, frankly, about that. They get fixated on the one number. And to keep it really simple, we all either have our own family or no family, and there's no family member who's ever explained by one number or one day. And if you kind of bring that understanding in education, you can see that, yes, numbers matter, that moment in time matter, but unless you're looking at numbers in days and context, you can get lost. Mm-hmm. Now, having said that, I think that the data you'll see, and again, we're going to be high level here, and Melissa will hit the themes. We can dig in later meetings. I think the data is helpful. I think you're seeing that there are places where our levels of performance are what we should all be super proud about. We're also seeing areas where we've got to get better. And as long as we go at that in a context of what other information we have, that's a healthy, and I've even been bold and used the term mature. Mature communities know how to work with data. Immature get fixated on single numbers. And not too far from us, sadly, very smart districts and communities are getting hung up on individual numbers. And let me tell you one story. When I was working for the Cleveland Foundation with the Cleveland Municipal School District as a key partner, that's when No Child Left Behind emerged. In an urban district, it became very high stakes as to where students landed in those measurements. So even super educators, I watched them manipulate the system to get certain children over a benchmark so that the Cleveland Municipal School District would be counted a certain way. And these were great educators. They got sucked into this narrow number look. Bring it down to high level, high performing, very wealthy school districts, not too far away from here in recent time. I'm watching some of them get sucked back into that mistake. So I want us in Hastings to be working with data. I think I'm preaching to the choir here in Hastings on this. Probably even some people nervous that we even have these numbers in our reports, but it's important. I've gone on a bit of length there because I just really think we've got to manage this one well. Professional and capacity building, that's strong throughout the report, throughout the document. Communications, you as a board, we're pushing on that. I think we made a lot of strides this year. I think we can do even more this next year. Jackie Saviano, who's joined us as a communications associate, we secured her once the budget passed, is already making a world of difference. And not this meeting, but I think in a later meeting we'll talk about what the committees are or work groups of the board. She's already developed, updated the plan you saw from last year. She's already updating it for this new year, already bringing new looks and new ideas into it. So I'm optimistic. We had a good year on this, and we're going to be even better going forward. Collaboration has to be a big theme here. It has been a theme. Tri-State has helped us look at that. You have that report. We do need to dig into that. That might be something for a retreat or something else for you to work with. Quality educational facilities and settings, while this end of year is silent within the body of it on that, we did want to put some summary here for you because clearly the bond has really produced now for you some investments in quality and facilities that matter. And so that's here. Lastly, while I would hope we could stop talking about COVID-19, that was a key aspect of this year. We don't yet know where we'll be on it this coming year, but we're waiting for more guidance over the summer on that. That's a key theme here. And lastly, not trying to be cute here with wordplay, but I think it's really important that we always, while we end the year, we immediately begin thinking about what's coming. So that's where in education it's cyclical. It should be cyclical. No one year tells you anything. So it's the sense that we end, but we immediately begin beginning and learning from this year as to what we can bring forward. So you didn't get a visual, but you got a lot of words from me just now, but it is tied back to the document, in case I've not been clear. I know, Melissa, you want to spend a little time. Again, we're just staying verbal here, not with any visuals. And again, stressing this is a springboard moment to dig into these things later at more depth and in more depth and in more detail.
Can I pause just for 1 second?
Please.
So this document is available online, is that
Oh, yeah,
right?
it's been posted.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah, it's right with the agenda.
Okay. Thank you.
And did you say the report will be done another day, going through it, or no? I wasn't sure what you had just mentioned.
Oh, okay, sorry, I wasn't clear. We definitely want to introduce this, have discussion. The thought would be to have as much discussion as you want as a board. The thought would be to have more exhaustive discussion at a later meeting.
Later meeting, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it may even, if there are questions where you, say, hey, I need to know more about this might be a good time to raise those questions. So be it either at the August 23rd meeting, or you as a board decide there could be aspects of this in a retreat you want to grapple with. Later in the year, there's some topics you want to come back to.
Got it.
Does that clarify?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And can I just also thank you for that report, because you said it was uncommon, but it's so useful, and particularly Melissa, it gives you an overview of all the sort of things that are percolating in the district. It is a very mature decision to have that information out there. And I would point out also that with the screeners and with the SEL screener, that, you know, you'd mentioned back when we did it, that there are many districts that don't do it. There are districts that do it where it's not public. And so we're sort of going to the maximum by laying the cards on the table. And, you know, I think can only better the board and the district also. So thank you for that. Sorry, Melissa.
No, not at all. I have the pleasure of presenting a high-level overview, just the district perspective on some of the things that we've been focusing on. And I want to begin just by circling back to what Bill was saying about the importance of data. And I just came from an advisory committee meeting that we were doing some work together and made the statement. When I first came here a few years ago, my impression was that the system was very uncomfortable with data for a couple of reasons. Number one, it can be really overloading for systems. There's so much that you can be looking at, and the rabbit hole runs deep, and you look into one thing and it makes you want to look into another thing, and it's almost like analysis paralysis at a certain point in time. So making sure that we're focusing on the right thing, we're prioritizing, and we have a shared understanding of what we can look at, the many different data points to be able to do that well. This year, we did introduce 2 diagnostic screeners, and as you know, and one was Star Renaissance, and that was the academic diagnostic screener, and then Panorama, we specifically took on the social emotional learning package, so to speak, to be able to drill more deeply. We made the decision to go into that from a space of being confidential but not anonymous, so we could really use it to pinpoint any students who may have a particular area of need. So end of year results, I want to back up just to the Star Renaissance data. Just from a process perspective, and it just came out right before this meeting, I'm receiving feedback from the system that is really, really helpful. That this diagnostic screener is really helpful. It's nice to have everything in one place with really specific things that, you know, are indicators for improvement to go next from a teaching perspective, and it gives us a sense of groups of students, how they're performing and how they're moving over time. Based on their grade level and based on their content area. So in reading, the end of year screening results at Hillside illustrate strong overall performance in reading, and the percentage of students when we're looking grades 1 through 4, and then including kindergarten, which had a slightly different diagnostic that we used, but when you include the K through 4, we're looking at or above benchmark performance ranges from 83 to 94%. That's huge. We were using that to inform interventions, scooping up kids for support, thinking about when it was time for them to exit that support. So it was very, very useful. At the middle school level, we're using it in the same way. We are currently seeing weaker performance in the area of reading, ranging from 69% to 80%. And ELA, as you know, is in the curriculum review cycle in terms of an area for focus. And this is one of our indicators that we've considered in creating the curriculum review cycle, like how are students performing, where do we need to put some attention?
Can I ask you a question, Melissa,
Sure.
about that, or do you want me to wait for my
No, no,
questions
you
to the end? When you see that it decreases in the middle school, is that because you would have gotten those same numbers, you think, for that cohort had we done the test of those when they were in middle school? Or does something happen where the skills drop off?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm at? Am I being clear?
You're being totally clear. The response is not completely clear, however, on my end, because we're entering it as a phase 1 inquiry, which means we're going to look at the reasons for that.
Okay.
So we have to really dig and ask questions to find out, why is that happening? Is that about cohort of students? Is that about something shifts when they come into middle school? Is it about program? Is it about, it's usually never one thing. It's almost never one thing. So we chip away and then we target, like, where do we need to put our primary area, like our primary energy, to be able to maximize performance for students. So that will be our work, is actually going in engaging in an inquiry and saying, we're noticing this, and why is this happening? How do we know, and how will we address it?
Right. So the parents get a score. Your kid is at 80 or whatever it is. but you guys get the actual, like, where they did well and where they didn't do well, so you could see, is that what you're saying? Like,
Teachers
all
get
of the
an
kids did
instructional
poorly on
report.
spelling, I'm
Yeah.
making it up, but like, so
Yep.
clearly that's the area we have to focus on. Or the teachers can look individually at students
That's
and
right.
say, got it, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so in mathematics, end-of-year screening results at Hillside also illustrate strong overall performance. At or above benchmark ranged from 81% to 93%, depending on grade. And at the middle school, it was weaker, ranging from 71% to 81% by grade. So we're seeing that theme across the two buildings, and we're seeing slightly lower performance in the area of mathematics, according to the STAR data. Now, that's just end of year. So I also want to talk a little bit about beginning, middle, and end of year. We did give it at 3 points in time. So what I just explained was like the performance measure, how did they achieve? And now we'll talk about growth over time. So we saw an increase at Hillside in the percentages of students performing at or above benchmark for all grades. So in all cases, we were seeing progression that was happening. So one measure of success is how did they achieve? Like what percentage achieved proficiency, and another measure of success is were they growing, and what did that look like? So that's what I'm speaking to at Hillside.
I'm sorry, was it math and DLA?
This is for I'm sorry, and this is for reading specifically right now. Yeah. And yes, it was also in math for Hillside as well. And in the area of reading at the middle school level, we found declines for each grade level over the course of the school year. Most marked decline in 5th grade, specifically I'm speaking to reading. So we saw declines in the most marked being in 5th grade. In mathematics, I already spoke to Hillside, we were seeing increases over time. At the middle school, we saw a steady decline across the year for 5th grade, as we did for ELA, but we saw increases in proficiency in grades 6, 7, and 8. When comparing fall and the spring. What I want to draw attention to is that those were the grades that we did the big ideas implementation, 6, 7, and 8. We did see steady increases from fall to spring in 6, 7, 8 mathematics. It's correlational, meaning we have to just be careful, it's early. And with any curriculum implementation effort, it's rare that we immediately see an increase in student performance. Usually we see the increase in a teacher measure, meaning, you know, how did things shift for teachers when we're putting things in, right? Like did instruction shift? Where were they drawing from for curriculum? You know, thinking about the activities they're engaging in with students. We call that, again, the leading measure. Like we want to see those changes happening first, and then ultimately it will impact student performance. And that happened second. In this case, we saw increase in student performance. Again, I'm going to be cautious in interpreting that because I feel like it's early, but it's interesting to me that we didn't see it in 5th, and we did see it in 6, 7, and 8, and we did put the new implementation in 6, 7, 8. All right, social emotional screening. So in K2, we focused on looking at emotion regulation, social awareness, social perspective taking, self-efficacy. In 3 through 12, we were looking at student competency and well-being, and student supports and environment. So when we compare the fall and the spring data in K2, we're seeing slight increases in the areas of emotion regulation, self-efficacy, and social awareness, and a slight decline in perspective taking. In 3rd and 4th, we're seeing declines in all areas, and they're small, but we're seeing them, except for self-efficacy, which is your belief that you can do it, and that we're seeing an increase. The biggest decline was in the area of school climate. And then for grade 5, we see slight increases in about half of the areas and slight decreases in the other half of the areas. Fall and spring comparison for grades 6 through 8 showed decreases across all areas except for emotion regulation and supportive relationships, which were the same, fall and spring. And at the high school, we're seeing slight, steady increase in emotion regulation, self-efficacy, again, the belief system that we can do it, and supportive relationships since the fall. And we see steady decreases in the other areas except for positive feelings, which was pretty consistent. So essentially, we're not seeing marked changes in Panorama, like overall, if I can just kind of summarize, pull it together. Relative consistency over time in all areas, most areas anyway. And things that we're continuing to consider around that are sample size. So we gave the survey on one day at one time across all the different classes. So in the fall, we had really consistent, taking of the screener, like all of the kids took it, practically all of them. We saw about 85% take it in the spring, and that's because we wanted to be responsive to some feedback we received about wanting to be flexible and providing a 1-week window. And because we provided the 1-week window, and because some of our high schoolers were transitioning out, and because that happened, we didn't get as high participation in the screener as possible. So I did want to mention that because that's important. And we will revisit that for next year to make sure that we're having a high participation rate. Potential considerations for the results, the consistency also include our program, our social emotional program. Different self-reports made by different students at different points in time. So you may see a shift happening at one point in time, and the same student who answered it one way felt very differently at another point in time, and someone else may have swapped. So that's, to be taken into account. And also the sensitivity of the screening instrument. Like, we want to make sure that we are attuned to how sensitive it really is. So you may not see huge shifts because it just may not get into that level of detail. So we want to attend to validity and reliability, and we'll actually reach out regionally to see if other people are experiencing consistency over time as well. I would like to dig into that a little bit more. So that's our SEL screener. I will say that it's been helpful in terms of identifying students who are in need of additional support through MTSS. Most of the students were on our radar. There were a couple that we picked up through the screener process. Sometimes children hold things quietly, and there were a couple of times that we had to involve the MTSS team to provide some supports. So that was good. The curriculum review cycle, I'm super excited about. I feel like it's great to have a roadmap. We can prioritize now curricular efforts over multiple years, strengthen our professional development plan, thinking about where we're focusing, and then also thinking about superintendent's conference days and what will be beneficial to people and where we're focusing our energy. There has been, as Bill mentioned, some key curricular work that's already been occurring. So on the docket was PE and health, and I had the great pleasure of meeting with the team last week, and we were digging into the health curriculum, and it was, we prioritize health specifically because we're also looking at expanding that first. And I'm really quite proud of them. They did a great job. First of all, it was, what do we even have? What do we have? Then it was, understanding that people are teaching different years. Is there consistency? Do we know what the arc looks like from grade to grade? We had charts all over the place. People were moving things. They were flagging things. We were doing crosswalks with the standards. It was really a joyful group, and as you can imagine, our PE health teachers like to move around a lot, so we were doing that physically, using the whole room. And we did do an exit survey from that work, which we got very positive feedback, Drew and I, about the engagement of the group and feeling that it was helpful to them, and we have a clear roadmap for next steps. We also went into our big ideas work, and we did a check-in around what, how did we do? How did we do with our first year implementation? We talked about implementation and have agreements of what we said we were going to do that first year. And there was one place where we didn't do what we said we were going to do, and there was a very good reason for that. And we explored that, and we talked about setting a goal to be able to get students there for the next time around. And again, really proud of that group to just be fully transparent and say, here's what's working well, here's where we see an area for improvement. We set a group goal for the entire team around where we can center our next steps for professional learning. And then each participant in the group also set an individual professional goal of where they wanted to see their own growth in implementation. So that was really positive, and I enjoyed that greatly. Science work continues, so there's a lot of alignment that's still going on for science with the new P12 science learning standards. I've received reports, even this morning, I got a phone call from a teacher and we talked it through how helpful Liz Mira has been, our consultant, and how well received she is across all of the different grades. And they found her not only an incredible expert and thought partner in the area of science, but had lots of resources to share and was making things better for them and better for children. So that's been going on, and that's all been part of the curriculum review cycle.
Can I ask a
yeah.
question about that? Because it's
Yeah.
interesting. You know, one of the data points in the SEL screener is, you know, the engagement that the children feel. And maybe it's an obvious question, but it's interesting when you describe the process or the dynamic that the teachers go through as working as a team, and sort of taking ownership of things, setting goals as a group, setting goals individually, and that's sort of like teacher engagement. And again, maybe it's an obvious question, but do you feel, or would you say, that increasing teacher engagement, is there an expectation that it trickles down, that engaged teachers lead to engaged students, is what I'm sort of getting at?
I feel, not only do I feel very strongly about that, there's a lot of research to support that too. It's the, you know, the technical term is collective efficacy, like believing that you can as a group, and that actually translates to, and you heard me say the category in Panorama was self-efficacy, like a student believes they can achieve. And that's a really, really good thing for us to all keep in mind too, just as, you know, even here, right at this table, right, that there is a power in the collective and having shared vision and alignment. And while you navigate points of disagreement, like in, you know, in a professional learning context, people are in a room, they will not always agree on anything. At the end of the day, as a team, we disagree and commit because that is really strong for the system. And that's the model for them, what we see in students in the classroom and what their achievement is. So I appreciate you bringing it up. I believe extremely strongly about that. I think it's really important that ultimately everybody is moving in the same direction. One of the things in the curriculum review cycle that we said was a look for ongoing improvement efforts was special education. It just came off of 3 days of a special education advisory committee. That team is mighty with really strong perspectives, really interesting makeup in terms of diverse stakeholders in that room. And today we developed, finally, we did data dives, we were doing really really heady, thick work. We were questioning the data, we were questioning the reports, we were noticing patterns and themes, and ultimately what we got to today is a key problem of practice that we wanted to tackle as a team that affects special education district-wide, centering students with disabilities, and also a theory of action. We will get back to that. But for us, as a group of 15, 16 people to kind of coalesce like that is not a little thing, especially when you've got a lot of different perspectives in the space. I also think that that is the way to do it. Like, we have to get there. We have to cut, and it sometimes takes some time, but that's really good. So now we have a very clear picture of where we're going, what our target is. We're going to create some aims. We're going to look at all the systemic factors affecting that. So we have a through line happening. So that's also part of curriculum review. This is ongoing, and we look at the intersections of how that plays out.
I have a follow-up question, but it's not follow-up, but it ties into the reports, and I may pull you back a little bit to that, but it's also is connected to curriculum, so I feel it's the right time to ask it. Just to echo what Dr. Makesi said, that of course numbers inform and not decide. For most part, people, especially I know that in this community, individuals that I engage with, understand that statistical data is for that, but it also serves as one set among the many input that we need to use to integrate alongside all these factors and elements to inform decision making. So that being said, what I'm about to ask is just focusing on the statistics piece because that's what we are talking about, not because I feel it's an all-in-all solution to what needs to be done. I have 3 questions that I have bulleted 3 questions here. I wanted to know how are you and your team using the prior data reports alongside the current one? Have you seen any patterns or consistency that is sort of happening from prior till now? So that's my first question. Do you want me to ask all of it, or you want to?
That's good. We are seeing, in terms of patterns, well, I will say the STAR is new, so it's a little tricky because ideally it's predictive. Like, so we're thinking how students are performing. There won't be a surprise on the state test, for example. It should be that there's no big shock, that we weren't anticipating something. So it is new. And then that said, the state assessments have not been consistent the past few years. You know, one year wasn't, one year was like a one-pager, one year there was, speculation that something may have been recycled, who knows, but I have to be careful, can't talk about the content of the test. But like, things were out there around, it was COVID, right? And so things didn't look the same with the state assessments. What we are seeing is, just as we're seeing here, we are seeing disparities between performance between buildings. We are seeing some disparities in performance between different grade levels, and that's, in different content areas. And we are seeing some disparities in terms of groups of students that didn't emerge from STAR, but we're seeing it in Panorama, we're seeing it, the reason it didn't emerge from STAR is that during the implementation, this year 1, what we realized is it wasn't disaggregating. So our data coordinators on that, and so moving forward, that will be in place. So it's hard to draw any kind of conclusive information from that. But we are seeing some trends, and we are able to look at that over time, and we are going to continue to keep an eye on that, and that's going to inform, where we put our priority areas of focus, because we want to make sure that we are zooming in where we see that variation.
Okay, so based on that, so you are being intentional, identifying certain patterns that seem to be consistent in terms of, oh my gosh, we don't need the specifics because that's not the space for it, but like, oh, they are not good at algebra or something, and it seems to be this particular grade, and so that way it can inform what, okay. And then the second question is, how and what process is in place, which I think you've mentioned some of it, which you are currently or hope to use to provide these necessary changes? Like, you've mentioned some things that you practically do in the space, but in which direction are you trying to implement some form of pedagogy, curricular improvement, all these different things that would sort of directly address those patterns that you've recognized in order to lead to the progress in that intentional way? Yeah.
So your question is actually not dissimilar to what Doreen had posed earlier, right? And so the process that I'm drawing from is actually called improvement science, and it's comes from Tony Brike's work, and he's out of Harvard. He's an excellent.
University of Chicago too.
There's always a connection. Both. Brilliant, and I can it's a thick, heady, messy, wonderful process, and I can just say, the Cliff Notes version is you get really clear on your problem of practice, and of course you could have a million different problems of practice, but you get really clear on what that is, you look at all of the systemic factors impacting that, and you couch it in context, like the culture of the district, the history, and then you look at data, and data can include qualitative data, quantitative data,
Anecdotal.
interviews, like, and that includes speaking to children, involving, like, deep understanding of the problem, and then from there, you have theories around design efforts, where it's, I like to say, the biggest bang for the buck. So if you put most of your energy here, it's gonna chip away at 80% of this, right? And that's how we do it. So it is a collaborative, engaging process where I don't have a defined approach. We go to the research and we say, what does it say about the problem and what does it say about the solution? And then we work together to look at all the systemic factors, prioritize, get in there, and take it on. So that's the process. And actually, the curriculum review cycle is actually a part of that process. It's almost like this plan, do, study, act. And so that's also embedded in there, and that there is an ongoing continuous improvement that's happening. So again, we started the improvement science process even with the Special Education Advisory Committee in the past few days, and it was fun for me personally, I could just be honest, to see it was messy, and people were not as comfortable, some of them, with the messy, and then suddenly the clouds kind of lifted and there we were, and everyone was like, okay, we're on the same page, right? But it's not clean, because any one person looking at information or data, you're looking through your lens, you see one thing, right? And then it's about how we string it all together to figure out what we're going to do to target it. So that is the process.
Okay. My last question is actually something that is curriculum, but you don't need to, do you want, I want to ask it so that you can sort of, when you are done with it, you can answer it if you want. So it's surrounding unplanned curriculum. And I'm sure you are very much familiar with it, how sometimes unplanned curriculum can occur out of curriculum that you have planned and may have, the intent may have an impact that is an adverse one. So this is quite specific question, and again, if it's not for this space, I'm totally okay with it, seriously. So I wanted to draw from you any example that in the past, which may not even be there, but in the past that I'm just, sorry, my thing just became crazy. Okay, so is there a way that in the past when you have seen all these inputs and have translated it to inform the actionable work for improvement, is there any specificity of something that had occurred in a way that might not have been a productive one at that time, and what plans do you have that have salvaged it so that it doesn't create an impact that lasts with the students? You know what I'm trying to say? Like you let's say I had a class that I thought this was going to be a great idea, and I'm like, oops, that really, and it happens with every good intention. And what specific system are you planning, if not, if it hasn't been done yet, that can salvage some of these things? Because I only say this because sometimes when I hear my community colleagues, because that's what I want to complain about, this happening, and they get fixated on it, and of course it's your child, so you're worried, you know. There is no, I have no knowledge of response to say that, oh, I know in Hastings when things like that happen, they salvage it this way. You get what I'm trying to say? So that's basically, it's something that you don't have to answer now, but I'm hoping that even if the process hasn't been thought through with planned curriculum, if it's something that we can start looking at, that may be helpful.
Do you want me to take a shot?
Sure, and then I have a young Zhao.
All right, do you want to go and then I'll go?
Sure. Okay, so So I think the unplanned curriculum, just because there are individuals that are teaching and things come up with students and things happen. I had the pleasure of seeing a keynote from Young Zhao, who is at KU right now. Anyway, he talks about America being an ineffective sausage machine. And I loved it. It just stuck with me for years and years. And he said the reason that we get all of these like incredible innovators, right, is because of this imperfect curriculum that we've got in this country. And that like things go in and things go. So this is a double-edged sword, so to speak, right? Like I think that there are things that come up where we say, wow, this is incredible, this is innovative, and let's blossom it, right? And that conversely, there can be something that come up where it's the opposite, where wow, that really didn't go well, and this had other implications. Just broadly speaking, I think the key, again, is a strong team that comes together to process these things so that we can minimize points of difficulty and maximize opportunities for innovation that are going to be rippled, through a grade, through a department, whatever the case may be. And that strong communication and structures and processes to do that well will help us to be the best and effective sausage machine we could possibly be. I also, off the top of my head, I can give an example. We had made great plans to implement, with big ideas, one particular type of assessment, and then somebody started giving some different ones, and this was part of our debrief. Like, why did that happen? Like, I'm sure there was a really good professional reason. Nobody's trying to go rogue, and nobody, and what we figured out was that the big ideas resourced, lifted, in terms of expectation of where students should be in certain areas as related to the standards, and that because we did it 6, 7, 8, and we implemented, boom, that they just weren't there yet, and they weren't where they needed to be, and almost like, think way back when New York State put the Common Core in there, right? And it was like, boom, and then they didn't have the prereqs to go up to be able to perform at the level they needed to. So, that's just one example of, arguably, probably not ideal if we're using a different type of assessment, although what came out of that is a really great conversation about how we are going to continue to stay focused there and move children to that point, knowing that there's now coherence and then coming through, and that we have shared agreement that this is something that we're going to focus on, and we do see that we are expecting a different level of rigor for them, and they're going to get there, and that we're going to keep our foot on that gas pedal. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does.
That's like an example, like a real life example of like something imperfect, and everyone had great intentions, and they had a really good reason for doing what they did, and we're going to continue to innovate and make it better. Not innovate in this case, but we're going to continue to implement and make it better. So,
Thank you.
I don't want to get in the way of other questions, because Mike thought it's sort of, from our standpoint, sort of, on this point, would be a final comment, but I don't want to do that till there are other questions.
Okay, you still had some to go, right?
Yes.
On the report, or you?
sure. A Cliff Notes version on the rest. You have the full version here. Okay, so that was like curriculum review. Culturally responsive pedagogies made some great strides. We've had a laser-like focus on the year 1 goals that were presented at the beginning of the year. So what we've seen this year, in partnership with Dr. Mateo Toledo, we've got a digital toolkit, providing district-wide professional learning workshops, reviewing curriculum units with groups of educators. 5th grade is an example, key area of focus, the social studies, the explorers, upgrading and designing sparks and courageous conversations, a lot of push-ins she did, co-teaching, and that's at Hillside and the middle school. We will be having a collaboration with Facing History and ourselves coming up, thanks to a grant from HEF, so preparing for that, interview committees. So a lot of work in this area and moving those year 1 goals forward. And then the K-12 Mathematics Committee, highlights from that group. was the finalization of a Hastings Mathematical Mindset rubric that was adapted from Stanford University's UCubed. I did share that out with the broader faculty, but hitting send on an email is extremely different from sitting and bringing it to life, right? So we're still in the throes of figuring out how to make that a bit more systemic and valuable as a rubric, not beyond the group that created and adapted. And it really is great. It's intended to foster growth mindset, and it identifies essential stages of teaching and learning in mathematics, and basically what the arc is of development for each of those areas. And then we spoke about big ideas, so I won't belabor that, but I'm really, really proud of that team. They did a lot. It's a lot. Taking on a new resource is not minor, because it comes with exploration of the resource, but it also comes with exploration of the content that's being taught, making sure that there's an understanding of the content, thinking about pedagogical strategies, thinking about how we're measuring that. So that, kudos to that team. And I just want to say thank you, and this goes across the board. The groups that I've been working with, I have been really happy at the high level of honesty, transparency, vulnerability. It feels to me that there is a culture of safety where people can say what they're doing, what they're not doing, why, and this is really, really important, because there are reasons people do and don't do things, and everybody's coming to their work with very good intention. So we have completely minimized, eliminated any kind of form of gotchas, and really focused on how are we doing and how can we do better, right? Always. How can we continue to raise the bar? And then finally, two other things. The tri-state visit, which you know about and we're a part of, many of you. We have feedback from the tri-state steering committee. This tri-state visiting team. Through a report recognizing our successes in the area of collaboration and suggestions to push us forward. And finally, Maureen and I worked with the tech committee, and we have the finalized instructional technology plan, which was already presented to you. So lots of great future steps, wonderful things for our graduating seniors. And when I look at this, we did a lot this year. I'm really proud of everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Szymanski.
I have a couple of questions. Does anybody else before I go? So I have two questions, actually. One is about the curriculum and how we're doing. So I get it, like you see the STAR report and then you're able to figure out what we want to do. My question for you is, and if this is too big a discussion, philosophical, we can talk about it some other time. But looking at the numbers, and especially looking at the middle school, and I'm not an educator, so I don't know. But I'm wondering if, is there an idea that maybe if you start tracking earlier, that is actually helpful? If you start grouping kids with the same abilities together, then they can work together to get better. Versus, I get why people want a heterogeneous classroom because, different people can help other people. But when it comes to something like math, I'm wondering if that's really something that you really need the kids who do really well need to be challenged with other kids who do really well, and the kids who aren't doing well need extra time from teachers to be able to do well. I'm wondering if that there's a thought of that, because when I grew up, everything was tracked, from kindergarten we were tracked, right? So I get why it can be a problem, but I'm just wondering if in math, if you see that for middle school. And my other question is the big ideas math. And again, I only looked through part of it and I could be totally wrong. And I understand that there's a part of it that's culturally responsible or culturally responsive, and I see why that's necessary. But I'm wondering if that part of it is good for a mature district that does really well in math. And right now, rather than focus on that during the classroom time, they should be focusing more on the studies. I don't know, I'm asking you these questions. So that's the first part of my question. That's the first part. So that's
okay.
Because that's about academics. My other part is about something else.
Yeah, so with regard to the tracking earlier, so there are some important considerations around that. The first is that we always want to be meeting students where they are. The second is that when you get a group of students together in a room, just like a group of adults together in a room, learning is inherently social. So we're learning from each other. And that's really important to note as well. And then the last piece is around, again, getting back to those efficacy beliefs. Do you believe that you can do it? So the challenge of tracking students earlier is that it creates sometimes false ceilings for them. So as students are still developing and they're still trying to understand and reach their fullest potential, tracking can create a limiting structure where you can go so far, right? One of the ways that you can sort of inoculate against that is strengthening differentiation. You have a heterogeneous group of learners, and then within that structure, Hillside tackles it, for example, through station teaching, where you can pull a group of students, give some really targeted instruction, and that works for students who may be more vulnerable, and it may make for students who are even stronger. The other thing to be thinking about is that in any, like a mathematics class, for example, until you get into a particular content area, like algebra or geometry, mathematics is inclusive of lots of different types of learning in mathematics. And so a student can be doing really, really well in one of those areas and not as well in another area. So if you started to kind of track in that way, again, it limits the reach for a student in terms of the arc of what they can achieve, because maybe they do really, really well in terms of operations and algebraic thinking. They're really strong there. And they're less strong in an area of geometry, but all of that is embedded in the class. So let's say, just for example, you're tracking students and you've got this math course that includes all of those different things. It really doesn't take into account the learner having a variety of strengths and weaknesses depending on what it is. So even in ELA.
Even the really smart learners in math, though, like if you're good in math, aren't you like good in math? Like, is that not how it works?
Not
Okay, all right,
necessarily.
that's helpful, I didn't
Yeah.
know, okay.
Not necessarily. I mean, people have, like, they have areas of strength in content areas, sure, overall, but not necessarily. It can
Got
be, I'm really strong in, my analytical thinking, and my spatial reasoning is like, I can't remember how to get to the grocery store, but if you ask me to plan for a dinner party, I know exactly how many plates I need and exactly what I need to spend. So it's a little bit tricky. And
Got
so
it.
when you start tracking or thinking about the idea of tracking younger, you're starting to get into that, which is that a student is still forming their mathematical, like their conceptual understanding of lots of different areas in math.
Got it.
But to your point, really importantly, we do need to be differentiating. So if there's content that a student is ready for, and it's not the whole group content, what are the opportunities to then extend learning for children who are ready for that reach within their heterogeneous classroom?
And then the second part of that was the culturally responsive question.
Yes, can you repeat it one more time?
Yeah, so, I noticed in the Big Ideas map that some of it was like culturally responsive, and I was saying, while I believe that that is important, and I think it's totally needs to be embedded in the reading and the English and the social studies and science and all of that, I get it. I'm wondering if in math, where we're not achieving as well, if we should be focused, if that is more in a district that's like killing it in math, and then you bring that in, versus should we be focusing first on, because that's not tested, so we're never going to see that rise in the numbers, you know what I mean? So when you go to the data part of it, you don't see that in the STAR, you don't see those questions in STAR and the state tests, so.
I think it's okay to do both together, and I think the reason we would is, we always want to be responsive to students, and we want to make sure that we're creating environments where they're welcome, where, if there's a word problem, for example, that it's not always geared for a particular demographic of student when you see word problems, like things that are relatable, less relatable. you know, and
And that I get, totally, of course, that should all be, and I guess, one of the things that I saw in the Big Ideas Math is that there's a focus on teaching about mathematicians of color. I think it was just actually Black mathematicians. And I'm wondering if that belongs in math or more in like social studies, or, you know, just curious what your,
yeah, my take is that it belongs everywhere.
yeah.
And I do think, because what it is that there are assumptions about who our models are, and that we need to make sure that we're being inclusive and celebrating models in many different types of ways, ethnicities, genders, you name it. Like, we should just have, we shouldn't just have one way of thinking about who a mathematician is. I remember teaching kindergarten many years ago, and having the students draw a picture of a scientist, like what comes to mind, and it was always the same. It was, and I use the word always sparingly, but, you know, yeah.
Okay, thanks. And the second part of my question is about SEL. So I get it. You see the star things, and that's your responsibility, and it's so helpful. Like, you can work from that. When you see the SEL stuff, do the counselors take over that? And then, like, they see the results, and they're like, okay, where do we need to work, and where do we need to focus?
Yeah, in fact, that came out of the professional learning committee. The teachers who are on that committee said it would be really helpful for superintendent's conference day, actually, that we spend more time as a whole system on the panorama data. But it is sitting with Jeanette Coker, it is sitting with the school counselors, it is sitting with the MTSS teams. They all have logins, they have access to it, they process it actively, and they use it for selection, so they do.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I wanted to sort of, if I may, elaborate a little bit on, sorry.
No, I just want to, we do have quite a bit to get to, so if we can keep it.
I would.
Thank you.
So just because you were talking about, I have had that conversation about sort of categorizing multicultural education, so to speak, and it's not like a math, it's not like, I'm just echoing what Melissa said, Dr. Szymanski said, it's not like a math or English or social studies. What the trend that is coming into education, which an educator, we are doing it even in our institutions, is that there is multiculturalism allows for the equity that the heterogeneous group of learners can identify with to connect to their learning. So, for example, one such importance of the integration that is happening is that if you start talking about, you have a group of, let's say, let me use maybe Indian kids, let me use it as an example. And you start talking about a specific game that doesn't connect to them on the exam when they know more about cricket than something else. It's not a culturally responsive connection to a group that is heterogeneous. And it's not because you just have to keep chasing things, but are you being mindful of the fact that you have a heterogeneous group and you shouldn't just make one particular culture dominant within that learning practice? Even with the math examples that we give when we are setting exams, you know, you may mention something that is not, and that in itself will pull kids away from even the very subject. And it's subject we may think, and so the communication piece is important because teaching is communication. And when students feel they don't belong within, although you may think it's just a subject that is just math or just English, but there's no connection to who they are and how they belong. That cultural humility needs to be integrated to create that connection and hence the learning. So it's bigger than just one particular thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to
I just thought this was a new thing that they were teaching, like suddenly they're teaching about, they had never done this before, and then
So
suddenly
just
they- but anyway, it doesn't matter.
identifying a mathematician as a Hispanic or this, outside of the stereotypes that are thrown out there as the norm,
Right.
allows.
And maybe I didn't understand
Yeah.
what the
Sure,
program
sure.
is. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you both. Are there any other comments, or Bill, you wanted to wrap up a little bit?
Yeah, I can just be brief. One, I think we really should use this report as a springboard, as I said earlier, and you can be thinking what topics here come out from the standpoint of a retreat. I mean, I think during a couple of your questions, really big thematic, strategic questions we can dig into more. The other thing I want to say is that you've got here in this district clearly a whole lot of individual, really good critical thinkers, pedagogically and curricular-wise, content-wise, in terms of your teachers and administrators. But to be really simple here, you now have heard connective tissue beginning to grow and develop. And that is not always well received. So I think it's really important for this board, if you like what you're hearing here, one, to know that if you went around the district randomly and listened, would everybody be in love with this connective tissue move? No. But it's essential and vital. Good schools, good districts don't get anywhere ultimately unless you've got connective tissue. And it's not top-down mandated. That sort of point about where does creativity come from, there's all kinds of studies that as messy as the U.S. system is and all our outcomes struggle, we have a higher rate of people doing creative work than in other countries. Countries that have been very top-down, Japan, France, come over here to study. Why are you still so darn innovative when your scores aren't great? Well,
That's
because
true,
there are all kinds of
actually.
other things going on. So,
Super.
so you need the connective tissue, and you got to honor the autonomy and excellence of your teachers, but we got to connect them better. But you as a board, we got to work together on protecting this work. There's going to be noise, budget, contracts, all the rest. It got to get figured out, but you got to keep this work going, because we were anticipating we'd spend, which was I think a healthy nearly 90 minutes on this, but about 50 minutes have been work since the summer started in really two big areas, special ed and the health side of PE. People take, so I just, the board, this is really important work. We can get better at it, yes, but we got to protect it. We got to keep going.
Yeah, I think that
That's
the
a
fact that
helpful
we,
segue.
the fact that we spend so much time on it, I think shows how
Yeah,
important
no,
it is.
I mean,
It's about our,
Yes.
it's exactly about our students. It's the most important thing we can possibly do.
Hastings is a wonderfully talented, accomplishing district, and it can get better. My hunch is you've not been able to have the kind of conversation recently we just had in the last 90 minutes here.
Yeah,
That's
it's
my
I want you to know that I think the work is amazing. I'm not
Yes.
being critical at
Yeah.
all. Question.
Doug, you have the
Yeah.
deepest history, I don't know if you
I
agree
feel very
with.
proud of everyone.
Yeah.
I do.
Yes.
I think it's, I'm
Really
so glad you
proud.
brought it to the school. The fact that we're able to have these is incredible.
It's important, yes.
I mean, these conversations started years ago. We knew that it would take time to even find Melissa, which you weren't here when we started these conversations.
That's right.
What I think would be very helpful, though, is when we use words like connective tissue, let's be specific. What is creating the connective, what are the 3 to 5 things that create the connective tissue that will be the things that will get shot at, that will get, trying to get taken? Like, let's just be crystal clear. What are those?
Yeah.
How would you frame that? very
Well, I mean,
simply?
number one, it's any change effort, it naturally comes with resistance. That is normal. It is
Right.
like
Every setting.
expected.
Yeah, if I may flip it around, would be making sure we have a curriculum review cycle. Making sure you've got time provided, and yes, contractually, teachers are paid time, that's what it is contractually, but you've built that in such that you're getting their time to work on this. And if you have people saying, we don't need professional learning, or we don't need that runs counter. So it's the curriculum, the structure and the design, and you as a board holding us accountable, that's Melissa, me, and others on, are you running that through? That in that cycle that Melissa's talked about, are you working through all parts of that cycle? You're analyzing, you're actually getting to a point to figure out what needs to change. But curriculum review cycle, yes, time for teachers and others to engage in that. That's 2. 3 is a valuing of well-done professional learning. There's lots of bad professional learning out there, but and I'm not saying in Hastings, but I'm saying, how do you do that effectively? And then as you're working with your leadership team, I'm putting this forth, maybe it should be first, that they really have a strong focus on improving. Yes, we're here, but what are you doing specifically within each department, within each building, and setting your goals that show that sense of here's where we are and also are we growing? I don't know if that's, and that you've got structures for that. So curriculum review, that's a structure. Right, to answer your
To
question,
hold the
Doug.
process.
As opposed to just, well, maybe we're gonna sit around and talk about it. No, we've
Exactly.
structured it. And then go to point 4, there's structure there. You're saying, okay, leadership team, there's specific members. You got goals. Are they goals based on growth and change? Maybe not tied to test scores, please. But, is that helpful, Doug?
Yep.
And can I throw number 5
You know-
in there? Assess and the outcome.
Yeah, a broad sense of
Assessment.
assessments and indicators, yes. So you need the data, and data is both qualitative and quantitative,
Correct.
in my sense.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Bill, that just to one thing is that to have all this stuff that we spend money on, STAR and the SEL, and then to not do anything with it is a waste of money.
Exactly.
So
We're
the-
already using it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So the fact that you're able to, you don't just take it and look at it and be like, okay, you take
Exactly.
it, look at it, and then act on it, I
Inform,
think is
exactly.
the most important
Yeah,
part. And that's
exactly.
really more important than what the data is, almost is what you do with it.
With it,
So,
correct.
So I think that, and it seems like you guys are doing lots with it,
Correct.
so it's great.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Szymanski and Dr. Percy. We're going to move on to public comment, if there's any in-house or online. No?
Nobody online.
No.
That's
Yes.
Yeah, I can
Um,
but we need to move the podium.
Oh, yeah, we don't have the podium.
Sorry. Oh, it's okay.
I could give her a
Oh, we
mic.
need you
No,
on the
you have to
microphone, though.
legally,
Oh,
yeah.
maybe on the mic.
for the meeting.
Want to just give her Maureen?
Yeah, give her Maureen's microphone, she could just come over here.
Hi, welcome. If you can just state your name.
Sure, Carmela Tedeschi, and I'm a special education teacher at Hillside. I just wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to work in Hastings. It's been an amazing 4 years here, and I've been involved in the community in different ways and in the learning of all the students in many ways as a special education teacher. I loved my experience here. I will be resigning as of August 31st, 2022. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the Board of Education for all of your support and all that you've given me here in Hastings and the experience that I've had here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, it's very kind.
Yes,
Are there any other public comments or online? Nope. Moving on to business items. We have a list of 1 through 23. Are there any questions or comments related to business items 1 through 23?
I might make a comment for you regarding number 13. That's the appointment of the external partner with the portrait of a Hastings learner. Please note, we changed that from North Star to portrait of a Hastings, thank you, to portrait of a Hastings learner. And that's largely advice of the proposed partner, because the idea of learner means you really are thinking K through 12. You're also thinking both students and adults. And that's a recommendation rooted in experience. There is a full packet here for the recommendation of Ms. Wilson. If you as a board do approve, we're already scheduled tomorrow morning at 9:30 to begin work. When you bring someone on who's been a successful superintendent for going on 19 years, 9 of them in Princeton, New Jersey, she does not waste any time. So the first thing we're gonna do tomorrow, if you approve her, please hear the if, is she said, Bill, you need a detailed timeline for our work. So I think I think the village, the community, the parents will be very pleased with this type of partnership for us. Any good district, connective tissue specifically, you need a nudge and a coach who keeps pushing you. You push me, Doug, and you push me with that good question. Judy's already pushing me. So, and that's to your benefit. So I just want to let you know that there's a lot in that one item that I think is a plus, but.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your information. Is there a motion to approve?
Can I ask a question? I'm so sorry. Point number 7, I don't know who I would go to for that.
I actually wanted to highlight 2 things too, but it's related to probably your question.
Okay, I was just gonna say, like, where is it, I'm assuming the prices are going up, that's why this
Yes.
is here, I don't really know
Sure.
what the prices are.
Yep.
And, that's due to inflation, I
Yeah.
guess, okay.
So I just I'll highlight just 2, there are 2 items related to the cafeteria, and there were 2 other business items that I just want to highlight, not so much, I know no one's asking, but I will, but points number 20 and 7, both related to the food service program. One is the extension of our food service contract, and what I want to highlight there is that the CPI that was used for both the food service and transportation is set by the state. We have to, unlike the tax cap calculation, the amount that those contracts increase is actually set on CPI. And these are reflective of those increases, which are almost 6%. So we're not, like, that was about double on the transportation contracts that we anticipated, as well as the, well, I would say we probably anticipated about 4%, but they're, you know, hoping that they would be at that rate. So what we will be paying our outside vendor to provide the service, and again, this is every district is this, you know, escalated number. Due to that, and also just due to like the cost of running the operation next year, and actually I had a fairly long meeting this morning with our outside provider and a consultant that we use, and our meal prices in number 7 that are set are increasing by 25 cents at each level. Of course, the new thing here is the Hillside breakfast and lunch, which it would be a new rate for those because there's no program that exists. But typically that the lunch and breakfast programs at the elementary school are less expensive because there's less food. The portion is small and it's a less complex operation. Like what we offer here is much more significant, and that's why the pricing is higher. But based on that conversation tied to your question, we may, depending on the price of food, because it's a little, that could be for another meeting. I could explain to you how the structure of those contracts work, but we are self-operating, and we want to not, like we did during the pandemic, have to use general fund funds to like keep this afloat. And there may be a need, depending if this is not enough of an increase to cover our expenses, we might have to bump up the meal prices again. We actually did very well this last quarter in our meal program, so the decision was to try to keep the meal price, instead of increasing it at 50 or 75%, 75 cents, we just kept it at a quarter. We felt as though that was directly related to the increase that we have to pay the food service provider, that 6% increase on contract. And then, you know, if come January, February, if we're finding that we need to either bump up some more of those numbers, but we also have a la cartes that we control, and I would prefer to bump up those prices, because those are things, like if somebody wants to buy a Hal's or, you know, like something, a seltzer, like I'd rather increase those prices, because that, it doesn't then hit the people just needing their meal. So I think we're okay with those numbers. And then also, as I mentioned, our 4 or 3 service providers for our transportation, those are the contracts for this upcoming school year and summer school. I have a meeting with them next week. We're extremely concerned, which we'll talk about in September, because the amount of students, both the increases are significant. The increases to gas are double what we were seeing this year, so we're already over budget on our transportation without the year, and as well as, I don't even have my full list yet, but I think it's a combination of more students going out of district, and not even so much that, but just the actual price of the contract is exceeding. And as I had mentioned, it's also subject to like what the other quad are doing. If they start bringing more kids into district, that actually just increases our cost by,
Right.
if we're sharing a bus and we no longer can share it, it's gonna, and this is for all of our out-of-district special education. In particular, we're seeing an uptick there in that cost. So we'll be talking about that in the fall, because I have a meeting with them next week, but as I mentioned to Bill, it is everyone is experiencing this very significant increase because of gas and cost of contract. Overall, like, and actually a lot of districts are seeing more kids go out of district for some reason, like special education placements and such. So, but that's something we're gonna have to have a very early conversation on, because we're already like exceeding our budget in a number of areas. That, like our budget that we just passed is already now going.
Could you characterize like the percentage that we're sort of overshooting?
Well, excuse me, you mean?
You sort of characterize the percentage that we're overshooting. Is it a tiny amount?
Oh, on the transportation, we're a few $100,000 in the hole, right, as of right now, what I'm being told. But I don't have all my routes yet, because the routes are subject to how they're routing. So, you know, we either may have to decide to go even on our special ed routes, like, we'll have to talk about it. I have to look at them before I can really determine what's going on. But it is a combination of, like I said, escalate. We pay for our own gas, so that's outside the contract. We're also seeing our energy bills. We keep getting notices from our energy providers. So we're seeing like escalations that are far. I think we put up our utility bills 25% over the previous year, and they're tracking at 40% higher. So you know, and that's significant when you're paying hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that, the cafeteria, we're very, so there's a lot of areas in which we're, those type of things that we're all experiencing. I mean, everything I mentioned, gas, food, and
Right, they're all-
transportation, right?
right.
We all are seeing that.
Right.
And we're experiencing it. So even as much as those numbers, I think, were shocking to people during the budget, they're actually exceeding even those projections, and we're getting forewarned by, I don't want to like, because we're going to talk about this more in,
Yeah, got it.
as part of the topic, but just as you see them here, the numbers that we're approving are showing a significant increase to what we anticipated, but, you know, we have to sign on to these contracts. And then, but we do have some control over how we route the kids, so we're gonna hope to try to, you know, get it tighter. We might just have to extend our routes. And then the secret number 14, that is the requirement in order to proceed with the solar
Right.
project, and
Negative
that's part of the
declaration.
state process, yeah.
Maureen, can I just ask a
Sure.
quick question? How much control do we have over changing or improving the sustainability or the healthiness of our cafeteria food?
Just in the interest of time, it's a good
Yeah.
question. I just want to, is there a way we can sort of put that to another time?
Yeah.
Or just because?
Sure. Yeah, so I'll just answer that really quickly. We actually can put that to committee, because typically we have a committee review of our health and safety, our nutrition policy, or I forget the exact name of it. During that time, our nutrition policy, that at the policy level is an opportunity to kind of review what if any, controls or requirements we put in there. We currently have a relatively flexible one, and I can speak a little bit more about that. Particularly at Hillside, we are looking to engage with like a parent community, because at an elementary school, it would be, we wouldn't be having the level of offerings we would have at the secondary, but typically we do that. It's a little tricky in this building because middle school and high school together, so some of the offerings I think we've restrained, but because of the high school population, we've had some, times where students are looking, but we do have control over it.
So we have some
tell the
control, and
food-
we can talk
Yeah,
about
we
it
tell
at a
the
later
food
point.
service company what we want, like not vice versa, whatever
Got it.
that is. So we can definitely, I think it probably would be appropriate to discuss it in the policy committee, because there is a policy that outlines what we
Oh.
can sell.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Are there any more comments or questions regarding business items 1 through 23? Do I have a motion to approve business items 1 through 23?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. All right, moving on, we have we're addressing the grievance, HTA grievance 003-2822. There was a resolution prepared to deny the grievance, which we're going to vote on. Is there a motion to deny the grievance, or are we voting on it, or are we?
You can vote on it.
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion to vote on the grievance?
Motion to vote to approve
Resolution.
the
The
resolution.
To approve the resolution,
Correct.
okay.
So
Sorry.
moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the resolution to deny the grievance? Aye.
Melissa, did you get everyone?
Thank you. I'm sorry.
So I think, let's be careful of that.
Oh, sorry.
Watching
Okay.
the vote.
Moving on to section 5 of the personnel, under 5A for appointments. Are there any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve the appointments in personnel 5A? So moved. Second? All in favor? Section 5B rescission. This is rescinding an appointment. Any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve the rescission in 5B? So moved. Second? Second. All in favor? In section 5C, leaves of absence. Any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve 5C for leaves of absence? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Section 6, this is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Are there any questions or comments? Do I have a motion to approve Section 6A, the approval of minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Policies, Section 7A. These are second reads for things we brought up at our last meeting. Are there any questions or comments regarding the policies here? Do I have a motion to approve the 3 policies in Section 7A?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Old business, I'm sorry, we have second public comment. Is there any online? No, nothing, okay.
You have to be in person.
Yeah,
we don't- we can't do
We
that.
are not doing
Thank
online.
you. Okay. Old business, these are the proposed dates for the 2022-2023 Board of Ed meeting. The only thing to really note, I think, is just that we've moved these, I think we're all aware of this, we've moved these largely to Tuesdays. So just want to make sure that everyone's aware that the meetings will happen on Tuesdays.
Is the start time still the same? I'm sorry, 7:30?
I don't know about that.
Bill, were we thinking about moving it up,
Didn't see it
or-
in here.
Earlier?
I think that's really up to you as a board. We would be, the administration would be flexible.
the man
So-
would be appreciated?
So
That
we-
could be another word.
Yeah, I would say
Right.
appreciate
Unless
it.
it's cutting into your dinner time,
Yeah,
your 6 to
right.
7:30 dinner time.
Yeah, I think we will,
We have to
I
do
think
We'll
now that we have
respond to what-
Maureen, now that we have Maureen in this group of 7, I
You can
think
conf-
there is a discussion to be had as
Yeah.
to what fits our schedules. The earlier, the better. Not everyone's commuting home just a quarter mile away.
Yeah.
So the question becomes the executive sessions and having enough time to do
Mhm.
pre-executive sessions.
Exactly.
As opposed to
Yeah.
post, because sometimes we vote on what we talk about in the executive.
I've never in 6 years seen a successful use of a after-the-meeting executive session. It's just,
Okay.
I mean, you could, but
Executive session timing would be difficult,
Yeah. And-
Well-
If you know that
Not
there's
everyone
gonna,
here is out at 3:15.
if you know that
No,
there's gonna be,
no,
no,
I'm
I
not.
wish. If you know that there's gonna be an executive session for that section, can you move the BOE meetings to 7:30?
I would recommend it. My personal opinion
Yeah.
is I'd recommend against that.
Consistent.
Because it's
I
not
agree.
consistent?
Start
Yes.
time.
Okay.
So we want to make it 7, that's fine. We need to be really diligent about our exec sessions. We've got to see if we can start them at,
Yeah.
but, I mean, I think our exec sessions have gone long this
Yeah.
year, for
Yep.
example.
And sometimes we do
right?
it after.
And sometimes we have an hour and we get 20% or 30% done with
Right.
the conversations we need.
Mhm.
So I think maybe we talk about it at our retreat at the end of
Correct.
August.
I
Okay.
agree.
Yeah, I-
So a couple things to consider, I think, just to throw it out there. How do we keep our exec sessions focused and tight? What's the right start time? I mean, it's a real kind of
Okay, so
management.
nothing, we're not predetermining any of
No,
that
we
today.
No.
do retreat.
So let's talk about the
Yeah.
retreat.
Okay, all right. So is there a motion to approve?
Well, let me just,
I'm
if I, no, it's okay, so let me just add on, and it's that exact same page, page 2 of the cover memo, updated item 1, we have plugged in definite time into existing board meetings to shift those to budget work sessions. So Melissa, Dee, and Maureen put their minds together. I guess I have to use Maureen C now, because we have Maureen Lennon, so we have, I appreciate now the added challenge to my name ability, which is not good. But anyway, so we've added in for the 90 minutes, we'll modify the meetings and we'll manage our own well for you. So the 28th of September, October 25th, we'll start digging into early prep on the board, on the budget. We figure let's pick an existing time
Correct.
you've already blocked. Number 2, we'll determine additional work sessions in that January, March window. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Number 3, I think, I don't know, Alex, you and I had talked about this. I think you as a board, I would recommend strongly you do commit to an August BOE retreat. We can figure out the date, not here, but I think it was valuable last time. If I may, I think you had a very good facilitator last time. I haven't checked on what's affordability, but I would recommend consistency there might be helpful. That particular individual, Ken Mitchell, and I haven't talked to Ken in a public meeting, and he can listen to the recording, so I would recommend you consider him. We can talk later if you'd rather not in this context. He knows you, he knows the village very well. He is, works with multiple districts in this region, so I think the continuity could be valuable. Then it is suggested here, mid-year retreat, end-of-year retreat. I wouldn't suggest you figure that out now, but interesting enough, I met with the Westchester Putnam Board of Ed executive director this morning by chance, and she said more districts are thinking about at least 2 retreats, the early one and a mid-year, because they're finding that's helpful. So within your association, if you will, Westchester Putnam, more districts are doing this,
Yeah.
multiple, and we are, as we had checked out, legally able to do that. So I would recommend you do, because August is almost upon us sadly, it feels like summer, but I would urge you to commit to an August retreat, and if so, then we can figure out how that gets put together.
Okay, thank you for those highlights, clarifications here. Are there any questions flowing from that, or?
We don't need to do anything with this today, we just, this is
Oh, we're gonna
just-
vote on it, but yeah, that's not gonna.
We already voted on this, right?
No.
No,
You hadn't voted.
We voted on the calendar, but not on
We
the
did?
dates
No.
of the actual
These are
deal.
circles
we,
on the
we haven't,
calendar.
yeah, we
Yeah, on
haven't
page
yet
3, there's the.
Yeah,
decided that.
Thank you, Bill. Tuesdays looks like a good idea.
Okay,
Or, thank you, Melissa.
Melissa D put it together.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendations for the Board of Education meeting schedule?
So moved?
A second? All in favor? Okay. Agenda item 10A, it's a review of it's the draft recommended BOE meeting topics for the following year. Are there any questions or?
Yeah, let me just highlight quickly, again, this is the structure we brought in last year. We've continued it for the upcoming year. It's this chart, it's posted both within the particular meeting and also outside of the particular meeting. We think we found it helpful in planning out for you what is going on. Melissa D., thank you for building it out for the year. We will update it. We've already pulled some things out. So for example, if you go through and look for a COVID update, you won't see it. The hope is those can get woven into the district highlights, for example. But let me just stop right now, that we do have to have an executive session on the 23rd. So it may be that we keep that meeting at 7:30. And then make an executive session ahead. That will be for the purpose of discussing non-represented staff raises, which would then be retroactive. If you study this, you'll see that we hope to have that discussion in this new school year in May. And we had hoped to have it this year in May, but because of the first budget not passing, we couldn't do that. And we felt it was bad form to be having you vote on raises or changes in remuneration before the village had voted. So, in very simple language, on the 23rd, there'll be an executive session where I'll bring into you recommendations for adjustments, salary adjustments for the non-represented staff.
That's August 23rd.
Yes.
got it.
Okay, thank you.
And then you would vote, it's not listed here, but you would vote, it would be formally listed as a vote item at that meeting. Most likely, though, you might say, we want a little more homework done.
Okay.
So these are the dates, but we are yet to determine the time. Is it already on the website, Melissa D?
No, well,
Okay.
no, because we just voted on it.
Okay, got it.
Sure.
And in terms of the time, so we are just voting on it, but not the time.
No, we're not voting, this is just an FYI.
FYI,
It's just a
got it.
discussion item,
Okay,
not a
that's what
vote.
I wanted.
So it's kind of broad, like there'll be something on curriculum instruction and assessment, and we can decide closer, or you would decide, or we could decide together what the topic might be.
I think we have the policy for the process,
Yeah.
so we'll follow the policy for the process of
Right.
agenda items.
But that's
this
why,
is the-
that's why
this
they're a
is the
little,
template,
right, that's why this is like a little
guiding
vague.
template.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
well,
guide.
it's actually, and that'd be something,
It's
in a
not-
retreat, we could, in that August retreat, there are a number of process, organizational things here, I think, that make sense to
Great,
talk about.
okay, thank you.
This is exactly how it's been worded in the year just finished, so you'd have
Yeah, I
the
remember.
CINA updates, that would be Melissa doing relevant updates, and construction update financial, that'd be Maureen doing relevant updates. But yes, exactly, you might say, I would hope not the night before, but you might say in the meeting, I'm making this up, in August, you might say, hey, when we hit the October meeting, Melissa, we'd like to hear an update if possible
All right.
on fill in the blank.
Yeah,
So,
that's
you
what I'm
know,
hoping. Okay,
yeah,
great.
but-
Because it makes sense,
And-
I'm sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just noticed some of the executive sessions, they're just like placeholders,
Yeah,
but
we
they
gotta fix
probably
that.
will be moving around, they're
Correct.
not, they're
Yeah.
just.
This is
you know,
still
yeah,
draft.
It's draft.
Got it, yeah.
It's not-
Yeah, I mean, I was just echoing what Dr. Marquez was saying, because it's always very, as much as it may shift around, I don't know whether anybody does menu for food in their homes, but you know how sometimes if you do that, you never follow it.
Oh, God.
So I'm thinking but it's very directional to help you
Aspirational.
plan. Yeah,
Right.
so I think that's what this is.
Yeah.
And more importantly, of course, superintendent serves as CEO of schools, so they need to know what it is that is present and need to bring it on the table to pre-prepare us.
Yeah.
So this is really good, Dr.
Right.
Marquez, and I want to say that, thank you for always doing this, because it's very important.
And no, I appreciate that, and Maureen, good catch, I'd meant to get the contract negotiation pieces out of here, I think
Right.
that was just a carryover.
Yeah, that's what I said,
So
but I
we-
mean, that, we don't know when those will occur anyway.
Yeah, so
Those could occur
So
in
those
other
ones,
areas,
Melissa
yeah.
D, we could take those out,
Yeah.
but.
And my
otherwise-
question was too about like construction update, hopefully next year we won't be having construction updates anymore, right?
No, but sometimes that would probably
Repairs.
become more like facilities updates, so
Yeah.
the smaller kind of scale or things that are occurring around, you know, the building, it would switch to a facilities.
Like the
update.
solar
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Right. Okay, great, thanks.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve item 10A, which is the recommended BOE meeting topics for 22,
Yeah, wait,
23?
no, It's just a discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay, so
Just
I
FYI.
rescind that.
There is no.
Yeah.
You can't rescind anything you've said. It's on record.
Motion to rescind. Board of Education comments.
I want to welcome
Yes.
another Maureen. And it's funny how they have the same color shades happening right now. See that?
Yeah, right.
But welcome, and we are very glad you're here. Your predecessor, I mean, she was great, but she opened the door for you to step in, and we are very honored to have you here. And looking forward to working with you. Nice to officially meet you, Maureen.
I would also second that, and, you know, I feel when we all came on, you know, you could sort of come onto something that's already moving. So if you have, do we exchange phone numbers already? I can't even remember. Well, I'll do it at the end here.
Text change.
Text change.
text
Oh,
change.
that's right,
In the
that's
other
right.
one,
Yeah.
no.
Oh, right, she's my
not-
unknown number in the text.
Right.
Not the other one.
But certainly, if you have any questions about anything, you know, feel free to reach out at any time to me, certainly, you know.
And like Jeremy used to say, when we joined, he's also new. The four of us are new.
I would,
I don't think Jeremy's
You're not
new
new
anymore.
anymore.
He cannot claim
He
that
has no
anymore.
excuses,
I would,
that's it. He's old.
as we welcome, you know, there's 5 of us in our first terms. So don't be too deferential.
Exactly.
Speak for yourself.
I just did.
I'm vice president now.
All right, you
I
gotta
have so
defer to
little,
those with
Jeremy.
titles.
Right.
Don't be deferential.
Oh, my goodness.
Alex, nice meeting.
Thank you.
Doreen, nice meeting. Bill, nice meeting.
Thank you. Any other comments or? Nope. All right, so we have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Okay.